educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work podcast, where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here is your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
I thank y'all very much for tuning in today. I have a special guest. I think we're going to have a lot of fun today. We've been laughing thus far. But I have the author of Cash is King. Is the America's working capital leader for EY Parthenon, working across a variety of sectors including automotive, aerospace, defense, healthcare, retail, and consumer products. He advises business leaders on how to optimize the management of cash. His work has led to well over $25 billion of value creation for his clients. He is a regular contributor to leading business publications and podcasts, often speaking at industry events about his areas of expertise. His clients bring him in to lead planning sessions, consult with management teams, and present to their boards of directors. He has a degree in economics from Purdue University and lives in Chicago and Columbia, Missouri. You can learn more about him at his name, Mr. Peter Kingma.com. Peter, thank you very much for coming on the show. So just clarify, it's Peter Kingma.com, not Mr. So I just want to clarify that. But Peter, I thank you for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks, Maurice. Great to be here. And, how much more fun could we have than to talk about cash?
I know, that's right. and before we got on the show, we were talking about sports, right? We're talking about Kansas City.
I was giving you a little bit of a hard time, my friend. I was questioning whether the Philly fans or the Boston fans are the most, how should we say, vocal in their support of their teams.
For those of you who are just listening, hopefully that you all will know that I am from Philly, born and raised, and I believe that the Philadelphia fans are probably the most passionate about every one of our teams. I don't think that there is any debate about that.
I think you're right. And as I said before, wear it with pride.
But see, now we're talking about cash is king, right? So because of that, that moniker, that idea, that reputation that Philly has, if we could package it, put it together as a business, I'm pretty sure we could make some money off of that.
That's right. Exactly.
But as you talk about cash is king, first, why would you say something like that? Like, why would you say cash is king, especially in this idea of or era of credit? Why is cash king?
Yeah, no, great question. So let me take a step back and say and tell you what I do for a living and why I wrote this book and why I make that statement. So I work, Maurice, with admittedly really big companies, very recognizable brands and names. And what I observed is even in big companies, I think there's a lack of understanding for cash and the balance sheet. So I think most people really understand revenue. They understand sales, how to get a sale. And even in big companies, most people understand the role they play in revenue. They also understand profitability, the importance of keeping expenses down, for example, or getting a cheaper part. But then when it comes to cash flow, it sort of gets murky. And so people, in these big businesses are making decisions every day that can positively or negatively impact cash, and they're not aware of it. And so, cash is what pays the bills, not revenue, right? So if you may have revenue, but if somebody hasn't paid you yet, that's, you're out of luck, right? So cash is what pays the bills. Cash is what, fuels growth in a business. It what enables you to go buy new equipment, to expand. And so the importance of understanding those dynamics of how you generate cash and improve the generation of cash. That's why I think it's king. It's certainly on par. I think I also say it's the third leg of the stool with revenue and profitability. But at the end of the day, it's the cash in your pocket that enables you to go spend. Now, your question about debt, and credit, Credit plays a role in a business for sure, but it's expensive, right? There's only so much credit you can take before you start to become too leveraged. And so what I try and advise people is the cheapest form of credit that you get, or the cheapest form of capital that you'll get in a business, is the cash that you generate from operations. And so before you go out and get any credit, additional credit, before you take on any loans, make sure you've done all you can possibly do to improve the generation of free cash flow from your business.
So, I'm not an accountant. I
I'm
don't.
not either. I'm not either.
And so I'm just starting out in my organization, and I don't know. I don't have any cash flow. The only thing I can do is use credit cards, maybe take out a loan, line of credit, whatever it is. So I'm not generating enough cash, in essence. So how can I do that if I'm just starting out or I'm still in my learning process?
Yeah, it's a fair question, and like I say, I think credit has a place, right? So I don't dispute that. But what I try and outline in this book, and by the way, I'm not an accountant. This is not a technical book. There are no fancy graphs or charts or calculations. In fact, Maurice, I wrote it as a story. I created a fictional company with characters, and in each chapter they're trying to solve problems, because I really wanted to take what could be a dry and complicated topic and make it easier for folks. And by the way, there's also an audio version. So if you're not if you like to listen while you're driving, that's an option for you too. But to your question, let me talk about a concept. Now, this will sound like I'm getting technical, but hopefully I'm not. There's a concept that we call cash conversion cycle. And what that means is it's the amount of time that it takes you from when let's just say you're making a product, for the sake of, it could apply to services businesses as well, but it takes you from when you spend money, say, to buy materials, and then make the product, and then sell that product, and then collect the cash back from the sale. That cycle time is called the cash conversion cycle. And it's kind of like golf. You want that to be as low as possible. You want it to be as fast as possible, as fewest number of days as possible, because the spin-off of the cash that you're going to get once you've made that sale and you collect the revenue is what you then can go pay your employees, pay your bills, or buy more equipment and expand. Now, if you don't have any revenue to start with, then yeah, maybe you take out some loans and you take out some debt to get you started. But once you start providing the services or selling the products, you really want to pay close attention to how quickly you can convert that sale into actual cash, not just revenue, but actual cash that somebody has paid you back.
So is there a sweet spot of trying to convert that into cash? Because, I sent out a bill and someone told me, net 90 days, or net 60 days. So what should be the turnaround time if I'm not generating it? Should I shorten it? Should I look at it from a different perspective? Because even though, I'm going to be honest with you, Peter, I grew up in a household where we didn't worry about cash. We didn't understand how paying our bills on time because we were always, the pun, paying, robbing from Peter to pay Paul, so I took that idea into my business. So how should I try to change that mindset and start to say, hey, you know what, this is the net time I need to have in order for me to have this cash flow?
Such a great question. And in the book, I talk about different tools and techniques. And right now we're talking about collected revenue, but it could also apply to the way you spend, right? The terms that you get when you buy materials or services. But Maurice, what I would say the first thing you've got to do is take a sort of a really candid self-assessment of what kind of power you have in the relationship with those that you're selling to. So let's say you've got a product and you're selling into a big box retailer, right? You're not going to have any negotiating power, very little. Maybe as a special supplier, they'll give you some breaks, but for the most part, it's going to be kind of a take it or leave it proposition.
Right.
Now, if you're selling to another small business, then you might have some negotiating power. But the key is to factor in that cost to carry the cash. So if they're saying, hey, I want 90-day terms, make sure that you've factored that into the negotiation when you're negotiating price as well, because that comes with the cost. That's like giving your customer a 90-day loan, right? Because you're putting that cash out, you're putting that you're providing that service or that product, and you're letting them now take 90 additional days to pay you. That's like floating them a loan. And so you need to make sure you calculate the cost of that. And what I bet you'll find is that not all your customers are equal.
Right.
That some of them are going to be worth doing that for because the volume is high, the price is right, it's getting you into a new market. You may make that, and that's okay to make that as a conscious business decision, but you don't want to just give that away to everybody without really understanding, the total economic impact. And you may find that some customers, it's just too expensive. They're not worth it. And this again is the bit about, if you only chase revenue and you don't consider both profitability and cash, you may get yourself into a bind. So really understanding that power dynamic is probably step number one.
So where can I learn this? Like, I'm not sure what you're talking about, Peter. I didn't go to business school. I did not, I didn't even grow up in the age where some of us being Gen Xers, I'm a Gen Xer. And so in high school, we learned a little bit about balancing checkbooks, just a little bit, not a whole lot, but I'm a little younger. I'm a millennial, a little younger, and we didn't learn some of these skills. So what are you referring to that I should be paying attention to in order for me to understand my cash flow?
I have got a great book for you, my friend. I've got a great book. No, that's the whole point of the book, right? Is I break down all these concepts. The same could apply. We talk about revenue or collected revenue. The same could apply the way you buy things, right? Sometimes I think we assume that let's say you're making some product, that buying the cheapest material is the right answer. But if that comes with a minimum order quantity requirement, so let's say I only needed 10 units, but they're going to give it to me at 50% off, but I have to buy 100 units. Well, it's kind of like the Costco effect, right? Maybe I don't need 800 rolls of toilet paper right now. And so I'm tying up all that cash in material that I may not need. So it's, so it applies to all of these sort of decisions that you make on a daily basis, but I try and outline that in a pretty straightforward, easy to understand, and sometimes humorous ways in the book, with these characters trying to figure it out themselves as well.
Nice. So now I am a little more advanced. Thank you for, offering me the book. Peter, I read the book and I still don't understand what is profit and loss statement. I don't understand balance sheet. I don't understand all these things. And now I need to find a little bit more education, surround myself with different people. But it seems like no one wants to network with me. So what's the best way for me to network with someone to start to learn these techniques on a hand, because I have the book, but I don't know how to, put it into practice. But now I need to surround myself. So how will I learn this in a practical sense?
Well, gosh, you're doing a great job right now, Maurice, for others with this podcast. I mean, I think the speakers that you have on, talking about, the elements of how to run a small business is so critical. So, I mean, I would turn it around and say to all the listeners, listen to the rest of the podcast that you produce, because they're super helpful. And there are other, sort of forums and podcasts that are out there. It doesn't have to be, and listen, most people don't go into business because they're thrilled with the concept of getting bills out the door or managing a balance sheet. That's not why we go into business. That's not, it's because we have a passion for something. We have a passion for the service that we're providing or the unique product that we're going to sell in the market. So we're really excited about that. But you do need to get some grounding, and there are other books out there and other, materials you can get, but you do need to have some grounding in those kind of basic business concepts, like the P&L, like the balance sheet, because that's the stuff that can really get you into trouble. In the book, I talk about, big companies, recognizable companies that got themselves into a bind because they didn't manage cash. One of them, so you may be too young for this, Maurice, since you told me how young you are. But this chain Blockbuster, these video rentals, and they had, stores everywhere, and it was like the dominant place. And that's how you rented videos, right? On every street corner. They had a lot of revenue coming in, but they also had an awful lot of leases that were tying up. So they had this business structure that was very expensive and very difficult for them to change from.
Right.
And so then along comes this upstart called Netflix, which is a whole different business model. And it turns out streaming is the way of the future. And Blockbuster's not able to respond because they didn't have the cash, they didn't have the capital to be able to respond. So today Blockbuster's out of business. Right. So even big businesses can get caught up in this.
So I do remember Blockbuster. There was another one. I can't remember the other one that their competitor. But they were just a little. They weren't as
Family Video, I think, was another one. Yeah,
it was a few. Oh, West Coast Video.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, all West Coast Video. And so, but I hear you and I understand that, and I think one of the things that you're referencing in that also is being able to pivot, understanding what else is going on in the market where I can still have that revenue, cash flow, whatever it is, to come in. So how important is it for me to be able to pivot in my particular market?
So important, right? So we saw that, we all lived through that with the pandemic, right? So all of a sudden, material was very hard to get. I think I bought toilet paper from Mexico. I paid $10 a roll for it or something. But in businesses, it was really difficult to get material, so they had to spend more on transportation. Now at that same time, interest rates were really low, right? And so I think people got lulled into this belief that, if something happens either negatively, like I'm, going through a situation like we went through with COVID, or maybe it's even positive. Maybe your competitor is not doing well and you want to try and take over that market, buy more equipment, whatever, that, you can go out and just get a loan for that. But now that interest rates are not cheap, they're more expensive. And as we said, there's only so much debt you can take on before you become too leveraged and they won't give you any more debt. It's really important to manage that cash flow because that's what enables you to respond. In the book I talk about, I did a study, and it's on my website as well, if you want to look at it. But where we looked at my firm EY, we looked at like 1,000 companies, and we looked at those that manage cash effectively were far more likely to respond or to come out of an economic downturn much faster and not have nearly the negative effects. And that's kind of intuitive, right? I mean, because if something happens and I'm able to open up my wallet and take out some cash and be able to pay for whatever it is, maybe it's extra transportation or materials, that's going to be a lot easier, faster. I'm going to be able to respond to that than if I have to go get a loan, tie up, maybe have to put material on, collateralize my building or whatever. It's just, you will be so much more resilient and nimble and be able to pivot if you manage your cash flow effectively.
So and I brought up that idea of pivoting because, again, I want y'all to take a look at Peter's background, right? He talked about in another show where he wanted to be, I believe, an architect, right?
I wanted to be an architect, but I spent all summer, one summer. So I used to draw all the time, and it was in high school, and in my hometown. I grew up in a small town in Indiana. They were renovating a theater, and the lead architect knew that I was interested, and the blueprints were really bad. They were in terrible condition. And so he asked me if I would redraw the blueprints, which meant I sat at a table, I'd have to measure a line, then draw another line, and then so all summer I did this while my friends were out having fun. And that's when I realized this is not for me. I'm going to go into finance instead.
So, and I brought that up because sometimes we feel as though that what we think we're good at, we want to make money off of. We want to build a whole career off of that. And now we're trying to, we actually jump into it Now, granted, you stopped a little early, right? You understand, like, hey, let me go another route. But some of us actually dig all the way into it, and now all of a sudden we're not bringing in the type of flow that we really wanted to. No one is buying the product. But I think something that within your story, when you realize that it's not going to be as easy as you thought it would be. So was there a moment of discouragement in that hey, you know what? I do need to pivot this and understand maybe I have another strength somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I go through bits of discouragement every day, even now, right? I mean, I think nothing, I love the saying that the only certain thing about business is that it's uncertain. There's always going to be challenges, right? You're going to have a big customer that leaves you. You get to the end, you negotiate a big sale, and then all of a sudden at the end they change the terms on you, and you can't afford to provide that. I mean, there's always going to be ups and downs, and there's different ways to cope with that. I guess I'm just trying to take one approach here. It's not the only approach, but I'm taking one approach here with this concept in this book, and that is to give you the sort of economic resources, the capital that you're going to need to go through those ups and downs. Hey, Maurice, one other, sort of maybe if I can ground this a little bit more, it's kind of a basic story. So, when I was right out of college, I was living paycheck to paycheck. And, fortunately, though, my employer paid me on the 1st and the 15th. And fortunately, my rent was due on the 5th. So I knew exactly how to manage, the flow. Now, sometimes there were lean days where I didn't have much money, but I knew how to manage that. Now, let's just say my employer said, hey, Pete, I'm going to give you 20% more per month. And let's say my landlord said, I'm going to take off 10% off your rent. But now here's the catch. The employer is going to pay me whenever he wants. He's not going to pay me on the 1st or the 15th, just someday during the month, randomly. And the landlord's going to come knocking on the door whenever he wants, randomly. So now in theory, I've got more revenue and more profitability, right? Because I've got more revenue coming in. My income went up and my expenses went down. So I've got more profitability. But I've lost control of my cash flow. And so during that month, if that happened, then I'm either going to have to hold on to a heck of a lot more in my checking account because that landlord's going to come knocking on the door and throw me out if I don't have the money for him. Or I'm going to have to, forego buying something else. I can't afford a car payment now. So even though I have more revenue and more profitability, I've lost control of the process. And that's all I'm talking about in this book is get control of the process, get control of forecasting so that you can actually then use and deploy that cash and that capital for your benefit.
Yeah. And that's the reason why I was bringing up the whole part of being discouraged. Because it could be that one little thing that throws everything. It feels like it throws everything off, but in reality, it builds you up for something else. Now you're prepared for the next thing, the next event. Sometimes we get caught up in we major in minor things. So that's why I was bringing that up.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Absolutely good advice.
But Peter, I thank you very much for coming on the show today. Again, please let everyone know where they can find you and where they can find this fabulous book.
Thanks. Yeah, no, the book is available, all websites, Amazon, et cetera. And as mentioned, there's an Audible version as well. But if you go to my website, which is my name, peterkingma.com, there's links there. You can also download the first chapter to see if you're interested, in the book. And then I've got links to other things that I've written, written as well.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Everyone, of course, that all the links will be in the show notes, but I can testify like everything. I read the first, the download, so it's all right there. It's very easy to get to. But so Peter, I thank you very much for coming on the show.
Maurice, it's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed talking with you.
Same here. But Peter, before I let you go, I got to ask you my world famous question. I ask everybody this question, man. My would you rather question. Would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road?
I would choose 3 doors, more options.
Oh, okay. Now, I'm going to say to you, there are no parameters, right? So would you still choose 3 doors?
I would. It's no parameters, meaning
There's
so
nothing.
I can choose 3 doors, and I don't know what's behind each door. I'm going to go with the 3 doors. We're going to see. We'll walk through one of the doors and see what it has.
Okay. So with that, I said no parameters, right? So I've had guests that talked about the doors being transparent, see-through, things like
glass doors. Yeah, I love that. See, this is why I'm a finance guy. I'm not creative. That's why I would be miserable as an architect.
No, but it actually would have been up your alley. But thank you, Peter, very much.
Oh, terrific conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, y'all, thank you very much for listening to That Will Never Work podcast. And I will talk to y'all a little later.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Chisholm Group LLC and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work, or will it?